Bill Carroll, Zenny62 Media, and these are my Sunday Week 15 picks. And I'm going to start with what will be largely a defensive struggle between the Cleveland Browns and the Chicago Bears, sort of a Midwestern Rust Belt battle. And the line on that is 37.5 over under. I think it's barely an under. I think 37 on the nose. I think it's a 20-17 game. I think that Cleveland narrowly escapes. I think that Justin Fields largely plays well. I think Flacco is going to be under pressure. The Bears defense for the last few weeks has been getting better and better, as is their offense. They're now fifth in EPA per play, one spot ahead of the Browns, and ninth in defensive success rate. Montez Sweat has really helped. Jalen Johnson's playing at an all-pro level, and he has a spectacular 26.1 passer rating against him when he's targeted on defense. This is going to be, for those that enjoy defense, right? I enjoy 1974 football. This is your kind of game. And then moving on from them, I expect, as we take a look at some of the other games, I have a strong feeling that the sort of marquee matchup of the Bills and Dallas is going to be slightly lower scoring than people are expecting. Now, Dallas has been on a tear, scoring 39.9 points at home, almost 40 points per game at home. But I think they're going to be a little bit below that. And I think the play calling has improved. I think Dak's playing at a super high level. And the Bills' defense has been, frankly, inconsistent. But I believe that they hit rock bottom as a defense recently, in my mind. And now they're headed back in the right direction. Now, it should also be mentioned that some of their struggles were due to injury. They had Matt Milano, really the key of their defense, the leader of their defense, lost due to injury. Daquan Jones hurt and Tre'Davious White hurt. And it takes a while when guys who aren't getting starters reps have to step up. But those guys have now essentially become starters. Epinesa and Hyde also got hurt last week. But despite that, scary as it sounds, I think their defense is going to be improved. I also, for the Bills, it's about Josh Allen. He is a guy that is 21-9-2 against the spread. So if it's a favorite of less than 3 points or an underdog, they tend to cover. And the Bills are 1.5 point favorites, which I know might be surprising to some people. I felt like it was a pick'em game when I saw that they came out most recently at 1.5 points favorites. That was a little bit of a surprise to me. And I do think it's going to be basically a 1 point game. Either way, I'm leaning ever so slightly towards the Bills. And like I said, to me, the game's really a pick'em. If I were betting my money, I wouldn't bet. This kind of game, I would just simply move on to the next game. But I do feel like the under is the play here. I feel like both defenses will end up playing better than expected. I'll say that much. And so instead of either team scoring 35 points or 34 points, I think 30 points wins this game, and I think it ends up being right around 51 points scored. A 30-21, 27-24 kind of game. But yes, I'm leaning very slightly towards the Bills, who, while they're not the better team, if you just go position by position up and down the roster, I just feel like they are the team better situated to win this particular game. I'm going to move on to a game that I do believe will be a shootout, which is the Washington Commanders versus Los Angeles Rams. So, two quarterbacks with very different sort of paths to this point in their career are both, I think, going to put up big numbers in this game. I think that Matthew Stafford, is playing at a very high level and will continue to do so against, frankly, a very weak Washington defense. And then on the other side of the ball, though he's passing more than they want him to or expected him to, I think Sam Howell will continue to be extremely productive, and watch for him to rip off a couple of runs. So this could turn into a blowout and could end up, eventually with them pulling back on the reins. I think that's a mistake, because I think the Commanders, if you do end up getting 3 or 4 scores on them and start to slow down, they're going to come back on you, and this might turn into a dogfight late. But either way, I would take the overs on things like passing yards, points, maybe even turnovers as well. I get Stafford's been great in terms of not turning the ball over, but because of the number of passes that will be thrown by by Sam Howell, I think he might have at least one turnover, either from like a strip sack or or possibly even interception. And I think that in looking at the San Francisco versus Arizona game, I think that that's another game that could potentially turn into a blowout. But 12 and a half, I've seen that even as high as 13 and a half sometimes on that particular game. I wonder if they'll cover that. I think that once again, they might get out by 17, 20 points, and then the Cardinals might get a late touchdown to get it down to, 13 points or less. I'm going to, if it's 12 and a half, I'll take the 49ers. If it's 13 and a half, I'm going to take the Cardinals. But yeah, so mostly I've seen 12 and a half, so maybe the money came down and pushed it down a little bit. I think that about 54 points are scored in this game. So if it's, if the over/under's anything more than 54, I'm taking the under. But if it's anything, less, then I'm taking the over. And a few other games that I think are at least worth examining and digging into. Uh, we just talked about, simply the fact that it's a big week. It's a very big week. The Seahawks and Eagles game is going to be an enormously important game. The Dolphins and Jets game is going to be an enormously important game. I think this is a bounce back game for the Eagles. I think the Eagles win and win probably by 10 points. And not that the Seahawks will play poorly. It's just sort of they're running into a bit of a buzzsaw in my opinion. I think they're running into a bit of a buzzsaw because of a team that's been close and then got a little bit embarrassed, and now they're going to take some of that out on that unfortunate team. Giants Saints 5.5. I think that the Saints cover that. Probably not by a lot. Maybe win by 7. I'm fascinated by the Titans and Texans game. I was obviously, before finding out what was going to happen to C.J. Stroud, Coach Bernard Stroud Jr.'s presence is everything. Now, I think Davis Mills is a talent, and if you saw him play at Stanford, you saw that raw talent. He's a guy like Trubisky, though, in that you could see all the raw talent and skills. It's never quite all come together, and that's what everybody wants to see. But despite that, I still feel like the Texans will gut out a win. 3.5 is what scares me. I think they get out a 3-point win. So they win, but probably don't cover. And then that brings me to, another marquee matchup, Jets-Dolphins. And I think that I'm going to take the under. I think the Jets' defense shows up. I think the Jets' offense keeps it close for a while as well, if they can avoid turnovers, which is really the only thing the Jets' Jets' offenses do is not put their defense in a bad situation. If that game is 37.5, I am going to, well, I'll actually take the over. I think that there's at least one score on defense, maybe by the Jets defense, that pushes them barely into the over, but not by much. Buccaneers Packers, I think that ends up being a game where I would say 44 points are scored, so I'll go slightly with the over. The Packers are giving 3.5 points. I think they cover that. I think they win by 4. But it's a barely cover, but a barely cover, still a cover. Falcons and Panthers. That is a game where the over-under has been anywhere from 33 to 33.5 to 34. I'm going to take the over. I think 37 points at least is scored in that game, maybe more. And I am leaning towards, not leaning towards, the Falcons will cover. I think that they'll cover probably fairly comfortably. We certainly have reason to be a little bit afraid by some of these. I've seen some big numbers in some of these games, but I think that a lot of the favorites not only win but cover with a couple of exceptions. And last thing I'm going to mention, this is obviously a big time also for young players who are starting. You're not really a rookie anymore at this point in the season. You're essentially established as a pro. You're going to see more and more of young players playing more and more minutes. I'm going to urge patience, but also watch for some young players start to break out and establish themselves as stars in this league. So once again, Bill Carroll for Zinni 60 Media. Those are my Week 15 predictions.